Hey guys, Ike here from Mike'sOutdoors.com. I'm here today to talk to you about how to improve the accuracy on your hunting rifle. So as most of you know, recently I've really got into rifle shooting and shooting rifles and reloading and things like that. And what my goal is basically is to become more familiar with firearms, to learn a little bit of gunsmithing as I go, to learn reloading, and really become a better shooter. And one of the things that I'm really enjoying is taking these cheap guns like these Savage Axes and making them tack drivers. And when I say track drivers, I'm talking bullet on top of bullet at 100 yards. I want a sub-MOA group, and I actually would prefer to have about a half-inch group out of all these rifles at 100 yards. And I want to do it on a budget. I want to do it as cheaply as possible. Eventually, I'd like to buy something like a Remington 700 Action, put a barrel on it, put a stock on it and the scope, and do all the work myself, put a trigger on it, and basically build a gun up from the Action and go from there. Or buy an AR and build it piece by piece until I get a really nice AR-10 built up. But for right now, what I'm doing is I'm basically working on these cheap guns and trying to make them just as accurate as I possibly can. So I want to share with you guys some of the things that I'm doing to make these guns super accurate. And these things are all pretty cheap. Most of them don't cost you much money. They're just going to take a little bit of time. And I'm not going to go into in depth on how to do these because there's a bunch of videos out there that will show you how to do these. And if I show each step individually, some are specific to certain guns, and some of them are just going to take a long time to show you. So I'm just going to run these down and show you what I'm doing to make these guns accurate. So when you buy something like the Savage Axis or the Mossberg Patriot or even the Ruger American, the stocks that come with these guns are pretty cheap stocks. They're Tupperware stocks. They're not a composite stock or anything like that. They're literally just a plastic stock. And these stocks are the biggest weakness of most of these guns. The Axis' biggest weakness is actually the trigger, but we're going to address that as well. But something like my Mossberg Patriot or my Ruger, the Ruger, the biggest thing about it is the stock. That Ruger is a tack driver, but that stock is leaves a little bit to be desired. So there's some pretty easy ways to take these cheap plastic stocks and just make them better and make these guns go from, most of my guns have went from 1 inch, 1.5. This particular 223 behind me was putting up 2-inch groups. Now I've got all of them except for my Creedmoor down to about a 1/2 inch, 5/8 or 3/4 inch groups, or sub MOA groups, by doing a few things, and all of them except the Creedmoor have the factory stocks on them. So what I'm doing, the first thing that I do when I get them in is up here on the front of these guns, you're going to find that these stocks are really, really weak. You can grab them and you can just twist them and you can turn them. We can't do that with this one because what I've done is I've taken some fiberglass, and inside here is a structure. They put a little bit of a structure, some kind of bridging, some kind of X's that go across there or whatever on all these different guns. And they do that to stiffen them up, but it doesn't really work. So what I do is I fill each one of these cavities with a little bit of fiberglass. Just pour in the resin, drop in your fiber, and let it set up. Now you have to be careful. You don't want this to go, I try to keep it below the top part of the bridging that goes across there, the structural support that goes across there. You don't want it to get too high because you don't want it to touch the barrel. But by just filling in these cavities right here, it really, really improves the overall stiffness of this gun. And you can hear it cracking as I flex this thing. But that really, really improves the overall stiffness of this gun. And what that does is it keeps, these barrels are floated, it keeps that barrel or this stock from flexing as you're shooting and affecting that barrel. So that is one cheap, easy way to really, really improve these. And it also adds a little bit of weight to these if you got one that's really kicking you in the shoulder. We're going to talk about how to kind of reduce that later on too. Now the second thing that I do is I bed the Action. The Action sets in here, and on like the Savage Axis, it doesn't get much contact with anything. So with this, I take some JB Weld, and what I do is I coat the inside of this with JB Weld. On the rifle itself, you've got to do some steps to ensure that they don't bond together. But basically what you're doing is forming a perfect mold of that Action inside of your stock. And that allows that Action to sit down in there perfectly and make sure that that Action cannot adjust and cannot move around from shot to shot. And that is a very, very important thing to do. Now before you do that, look this up and make sure that you're doing it right. Look it up, a a tutorial, a thorough video, and how to do it. But that is the second thing that I do, is bed the action on these things. And that is one of the things that really improves the accuracy overall. Another thing that you can do if you don't want to bed the action is you can order some of these. These are pillars, and these actually come from Pete's Pillars. Pretty simple little product. They're just an aluminum piece, and then you got to do a little bit of work to them, but you're going to basically put those in where your action screws go, and it's going to touch your action, and it's going to make that action conform, or make that action more solid. And you're basically doing the same thing that you're doing, a little bit different, but you're basically doing the same thing as you're doing when you're bedding this, is allowing that action to be absolutely rock solid and not move. So those are Pete's Pillars. I'm going to install them on my Creedmoor and see how they work versus the bedding, and just kind of see how they work on that Boyd stock with that. So that's another way you can do your action on there. And it's another easy way. Those are about 15 bucks for a set of them, and they're pretty easy to install and pretty easy to do overall. Now, the third thing that you can do to really improve your accuracy, and probably makes the most difference, is finding the right bullet. My 25-06, I got really lucky. I went out and bought some Hornady American Whitetails, and that gun just loves them. It just absolutely shoots them fantastic. My 223 could not find a good bullet that went to it. I got lucky. I hand loaded some up and got a really good combination for hand loading. Some of you guys don't have access to be able to hand load, or someone who can hand load for you, and that can be but you can obtain that by finding the right factory ammo. Sometimes it's finding the right bullet weight for your barrel's twist. Sometimes it's just, some of those vary from powder to powder, and a little bit of difference in powder can make a huge difference in your accuracy. On my 25-06, I shot some hand loads out of it, and I can't remember what the grain weight was on it, but it was the exact same bullets, and all I changed was the grain weight. And my highest grain weight load shot good. My middle one shot great, shot as good or better as the American Whitetails. And my third one was absolutely terrible, just putting up bullets all over the place. And there was probably only 3-4 grains difference from the top load to the bottom load. So bullets that are exactly the same, made by different manufacturers, can have a big difference in the accuracy of your gun. That's one of the reasons why I started hand loading, just so I can fine tune those recipes to get the most accuracy out of that, out of my bullets. So the other thing that you can do, and when you got to watch when you put these back together, is make sure your action screws are set to the proper torque. If you over torque them, it can mess up your accuracy. If you under torque them, it can mess up your accuracy. And so set these to the manufacturer's recommendations. And I haven't messed with it yet, but I've been told that you can mess with the torque on these and it will change your accuracy as well. So torquing these action screws back down to the proper proper amount is very important. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you guys about here is something that I only do to the Savage Axis. The Axis 2, the Mossbergs, the Rugers. And the Rugers, one of the things that makes the Rugers so good, before we move on to this, is they have a pillar bedding style system. And that's why the Ruger Americans, even though they come with those Tupperware style stocks, are really accurate guns. My Ruger American, it just puts up, you know, 3/4 inch groups, and it doesn't seem to matter what kind of bullet I put in there, but they put up fantastic groups. So the last thing that I do with these Savage Axes specifically is the Axis triggers are just terrible. The action on those, or the pull weight on those, is like 6 to 6.5 pounds, and it's really heavy. So what I do on these is I put an M Carbo spring kit in them, and I'll show you on this other rifle here what I'm talking about. This one does not have an M Carbo kit in it yet, but the M Carbo kit, depending on which one you buy, their Pro kit comes with spacers to allow this trigger not to move around. But the big thing is it replaces this spring right here, and this spring is what goes up and down whenever you fire this gun. And this gun is unloaded, and that is what is going to determine your trigger stiffness. So when you replace that spring with the M Carbo spring kit, it lowers this down. I'm going to make sure this is unloaded again. it lowers this trigger pull down to about 3 pounds. So from that 6 pounds to a nice crisp pull. Those shims make that trigger where it doesn't want to move around in there. This one may not have the trigger or the shims in it. I got one that does and one that doesn't. But those shims are really nice to get this trigger where it doesn't move around. It doesn't have creep in it, and it really reduces the overall trigger pull weight. And I mean, that's about 3 pounds, which for hunting is what I like. I want a lightweight trigger, but also don't want one that's so light if I do something like stalking and my gun is off safety, which you should never do, but mistakes happen and things like that are going to be overlooked sometimes. I don't want it to be so light that a stick brushes up against it and sets it off. So I like this M Carbo kit because it sets it to where it's light enough that I don't have to really pull to get it to go off, but I can also give it a nice gentle squeeze and it will trigger it. So I really like the M Carbo kit. The other thing about the M Carbo kit is versus like a Timney trigger, the M Carbo kit's about 15 bucks. So the upgraded, the Pro kit is 20 plus shipping. So you're gonna pay about 3 or 4 bucks shipping. But that is overall for these Savage guns a huge improvement to the trigger, and that is one of the things that really determines the Savage accuracy quite a bit. So you can glass bed the front and the fore end of the stock. You can bed your action. You can improve the trigger on the Savages with the M Carbo kit, and the most important thing is finding the right bullet. Finding the right bullet will definitely improve your accuracy. Sometimes it sucks. You got to go out and buy 2, 3 different rounds, 4 different rounds, or if you're hand loading, you got to try 2 or 3 different ones. But with your hand loading, you can do 5 rounds at a time and really improve your accuracy with the bullet, and that probably makes the most difference of all of the things that you can do. And now another thing that I was going to discuss too, my Ruger American is the Predator version, and it has the shorter barrel on it. It's 308, and the recoil on that thing is just was not very fun to shoot. Another thing you can do is you can actually remove this butt cap on these. You can't do it on the old Savages because they have a hole right here where the trigger goes, but these new Savages with this stock, you can do this. You can actually take the butt cap the shoulder pad off of here to where you can get access to this inside here, and you can fill that with a little bit of the same fiberglass and resin that you got up here and add some weight to this gun to absorb a little bit of that recoil. And how much you add is up to you. On my Ruger American, I ended up adding some of the resin in there and doing some sinkers in there to add a little bit of weight to it and really reduce the recoil on it by quite a bit by just adding some resin, basically setting this thing, hanging it. What I did was hung it just like that, poured the resin in the end and let it set up overnight, and then shouldered it, shot it, and then added a little bit more until I got it to the weight where I thought it was still manageable to carry around, but also to where it had a good weight and the recoil was really absorbed. So if you're having an issue with recoil, you can add some weight to the back of the stock plus the additional weight that you're adding here, and it will absorb a little bit of that recoil to help you when you're firing that gun, or if you've got a kid doing it. But you got to be careful because you don't want this thing to weigh 15 pounds either, dragging it around. But that's something you can do to absorb a little bit of those recoil. Completely off the subject of improving accuracy, but one of the things I do too is I try to avoid buying cheap scopes. I don't want to buy a $300 scope, but I got like this one is the Vortex Copperhead. Paid $129 for it at Academy. I also have a Bushnell banner that was about $70. I don't want to pay $300 for a scope, but also don't want a $30 scope either. So I've found that the Bushnell banners and the Vortex Copperheads are pretty good scopes, and they really do seem to help me see my target clearly and really place my shots right on top of each other. So that helps quite a bit too. So buy the best optics that you can afford to buy without going broke. For me, that's anywhere from the $70 to $200 range is where I kind of have stayed so far with my optics. So I kind of got off on a tangent, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope this helps you to improve the accuracy on your rifle. And like I said, accuracy on these rifles, they're all going to come out of the box and shoot. An 1.5 to 2 inch group is probably a pretty fair assessment for most Savage axes. My Ruger came out shooting an MOA or better, but these little things you can do to it, and you can really improve that accuracy down to my 25-06 puts up 3/4 inch groups. This 223 puts up 5/8 inch groups. So that really does improve the accuracy overall, and it's just a lot more fun to shoot when you're just putting up groups at 100 yards, the size of a quarter. So these things really do make a difference. So if you like this video and you want more gun videos, please comment below. And if you have questions about what I'm doing to these rifles, please comment below. If I did something wrong, definitely comment below. But if there's something else I can do to improve the accuracy on these, please give me that suggestion as well. So I appreciate you guys watching these videos. Appreciate all the comments and the likes and subscribes. And if you want to follow us on social media, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook under Ike's Outdoors, and you'll see a lot of the stuff we do there, like I'm doing the 6.5 Creedmoor build on there right now. So you can follow us there under Ike's Outdoors. Appreciate you guys watching. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook under Ike's Outdoors, and you'll see a lot of the stuff we do there, like I'm doing the 6.5 Creedmoor build on there right now. So you can follow us there under Ike's Outdoors. Appreciate you guys watching.